webinar based on scored audits, risk assessments, and data capture on a mobile device. Currently speaking is Chris Higgins, and as you can see on screen, I am the Customer Solutions Manager here at Priority, for anybody who's not met me. And shortly, I'll be introducing you to James Flynn, who is our CTO and founder. I'll just quickly run through an agenda of what we're going to cover in the next 45 minutes or so, and then we'll take it from there. So perfect. So covering off in today's agenda, we've got some introductions. I've just introduced myself. I'll pass you over to James in a moment, as I mentioned. And then James is going to take us through this brief presentation, which kind of gives a bit of an introduction to scored audits and why that is important. He'll then go through into 3iVerify and take you through a demo of the scored audit forms and the use of multiple devices, whether that be a mobile device or a tablet device, and just show you the functionality of that. There'll also then be a Q&A moderated by myself, and I just want to briefly introduce you to that, because we are, well, here at Priority as well, we are using Zoom webinar for the first time, so it's very new to ourselves as well. But if down on the bottom of the screen, just beside the chat function, there is a button that you should be able to see that says Q&A. Pretty straightforward. If you pop your questions in there throughout the presentation, anything that comes up, then we will come back to it once James has finished the demonstration, and we'll get you some answers for that today. So if you use that function, Q&A, pop in your questions in there throughout, and we will answer them at the end. And then there's a little introduction to a kind of special offer related to the scored audits and the use of a mobile device. So as promised, I'm going to pass you over now to James, who's going to introduce himself and start the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Chris, and thank you for everyone who's attended today. So we will just run through, for those that don't know us, a couple of pointers on who we are and so on. So Priority is a company that actually was founded as a intellectual property container in 2010. And we began developing our solution 3iVerify in 2015 with our first customer being Park Cakes. And thank you very much, Park Cakes. I know there's a few of you guys on the call today. 2016, the major need had kind of changed in the food industry in the wake of the horse meat scandal, the BRC Global Food Standard, and all of the other major GFSI certification schemes all updated their standards on supplier management and raw material management and so on. And that's really evolved. It's been the basis for the evolution of 3iVerify into what it is today. 2017 through to 2019, we saw there was some new requirements coming from the US market in the form of FSVP, that stands for Foreign Supplier Verification Program. And it's basically FDA compliance checking on the foods that come from outside the US into the US. So we adapted our system in terms of the content that's in there, and it's testament to the flexibility of our system that we were able to do that. That led to us establishing a new business called US Import Agent last year that focuses solely on that activity. In this year, 2020, we launched just very recently our AI scan module, which is the result of an 18-month Innovate UK funded project, which helped us leverage artificial intelligence to really focus in on events, risk events in the supply chain. So whilst we're still quite early with that, we're getting some good results from it, and we're still tweaking that. You could, still call it beta software at this point in time. So moving on to more into today's topic, we've been talking for some time with some customers about the use of scored audits, and particularly making these audits accessible on mobile devices. So that's what we're going to talk about today in a bit more detail. A couple of points, I'm not going to bore you too much with this. Our approach is that we're not about out-of-the-box software. It's all about an iterative approach based on customer needs. And again, that's what we're trying to do today with the scored audit side of things. Our key development objectives are to be a secure software as a service model, to be easy to use, highly configurable, and scalable. And we work very closely with our customers. So this is the problem that we focus on in any food company, and indeed across the food supply chain. This is very typical of the situation where you have information in different systems, The information might be different versions of the information, out-of-date information, and this information is floating around in emails, spreadsheets, documents, sitting on people's desktops, servers, and so on. And we believe that this causes quite a lot of problems within the food industry because of these silos, not only within a food company, but also along the food supply chain. So what we try and do is connect everyone into one food safety compliance operations system. To do this, we want to take an integrated approach where we are really starting the journey. We can start the journey at any stage, but it makes most sense to start the journey in the supplier and raw material information through to traceability systems, quality and food safety standards, training, and then of course audit and corrective action to keep that whole continuous improvement loop running. And we'll talk about that again in a bit more detail today. So why scored audits? So I was looking for a kind of a rationale when I was thinking about this particular slide on here, and it all comes back to improvement, particularly continuous improvement. Peter Drucker was a very famous management consultant. If you don't know who he is, Google him. There's lots of really very sage and wise information comes from this guy. But his most famous thing that he said is, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And therefore, scored audits are a very useful tool for example, reducing risk by managing things. And we're going to focus on COVID today, but the same can be said for food safety compliance, quality, and so on, and even supply chain risk. Next, things like providing a routine scoring to be able to spot any emerging trends. So if you see a difference in scoring on a particular question or KPI or something like that, that might tell you something that's happening, and exceptions as well. And to measure performance and also discover and define new KPIs based on the information you're getting out of the system. Ultimately, providing benchmarking over time and being able to show the links between performance and investment. And that's very important when you need to justify any investment in any new kit, any new processes, new people, and so on. More than often, and especially in this day and age, it's very important to be able to have a good business case. So scored audits and that type of approach are very useful for these things. Looking at COVID and focusing a bit more on COVID, we're going to do some quite deep dives into how we can use our solution to help in these situations. But we all know that the big problems that are happening right now is that retail and hospitality are massively affected. Hugely is just not a big enough word. Hugely affected, and food factories. And they're affected because of the outbreaks of infections, the lack of controls, and the lack of compliance, both by employers and by staff. And we're going to look at that in some detail. Food factories also are regularly being closed because of the kind of conditions that people are working in, the opportunities for cross-infection between staff, whether that be on the production line, in the changing room, in the canteen, on the way to work, or whatever. There are a lot of factories that have lost a lot of money and a lot of opportunity and a lot of lives along the way as well. So, there's a mix of economics and, the human factor involved here. But to stay safe and to stay in business, we need effective management control. We need to be able to monitor results. And we need effective compliance of employees and employers. It should really be there. And the three big points I'd like to really make here on this side of things in terms of the problem. The key problem is that, often under law, and particularly here in the UK and in the EU, employers have a duty of care to employees. And I'm sure it's the same in the US as well. So the Health and Safety at Work Act, for example, here in the UK, enshrines this in law, and that's why we have health and safety. Similarly, employees have a duty of care to the employer, but they also have a duty of care to their colleagues. So one of the really big problems that's out there, I guess the elephant in the room is, people want to stay work and stay in their job, but how compliant are they being when they're not in the job? What we are offering today is some examples of how you may be able to implement this kind of compliance monitoring, because these three core tenets, if you like, are very important to the control of the spread of this virus and the impact that it has on our businesses and on our lives. So we're going to look at this in detail in a moment, but in the actual system itself. But this is an example of, it's just a quick example we pulled together on how you could use a scoring system to assess the risk of an employee, in this particular case, of bringing COVID into the work environment where other people might become infected, and ultimately the business may be closed for a period of time, and lives may be lost, of course. So in this example, we created 11 questions to test various things, the most important of which you can see here is, have you been advised or requested to have a COVID test or self-isolate through NHS contact tracing health, blah, blah, blah. If yes, give details. So you're going to see this stuff in action in a moment. If they answer yes to that, then there are 0 points. And if they answer no, then they get 115. And we set 115 particularly to ensure that if they set 115 there for that one, so that if they do not get that 115 points, then through the rest of the score, there's no way they can pass the audit. So there's or the assessment, and the pass mark was set at 70%. So this just gives you an idea of how we can weight things using a yes/no scored style of audit in order to make sure that the most important things are taken account of. So we're going to see that in a second. What we're also going to see is a custom BI dashboard that can give us some insight into what the trends are. This is a very basic one, but you'll be able to see how this could be useful in monitoring the, let's say, the COVID security and compliance of your workforce, for example. And this whole principle can be applied to anything. So without any ado, and just to reiterate what Chris was saying earlier, please do add any questions you have in the chat box as we're going through this. Now, I'm just going to refresh the screen to show you some examples. So in here, you can see we've got a few different audit examples. I've got one here for a retail, hospitality and retail. However, it's still absolutely relevant in terms of the approach for manufacturing or for consulting or other scenarios. So I'm going to do this one on the laptop. And then I'm going to look at the employer COVID startup assessment on a tablet device. And finally, that's if all the technology works, by the way. So we've got our fingers crossed, first time using Zoom webinars today. And then finally, we're going to use the employee COVID-19 assessment on a mobile phone. And we're choosing these quite deliberately so that you can see the kind of mobile optimization, if you like, of the questionnaires themselves and how these work with a scored audit type of situation. So we've done these as supplier questionnaires, but normally you would, some of these would be internal questionnaires, and some of them would simply be a form that you would send to someone. And we're even considering the idea of you could have a QR code. Employee comes into work to start their shift. They scan the QR code, key in their employee number, and then they fill in that employee assessment. But we'll get to all of that a bit later. So let's go and have a look at the coffee chain audit. So you can think of Costa Coffee, for example, or Starbucks or something like that. Wanted to pick an example which would really give us an overarching look at what an audit would look like for a business like that. And and this is, you can see everything in this particular case. So first thing is we step through the initial section, and then we get to the first section on this particular audit, which is cleanliness. And in this case, we are showing the score to the site because they're part of our business. We want them to know how they're doing and so on. And you can see there is a score associated with each of the options here for the yes, no, not applicable, whereby you can set that and then make any observations. I might say not cleaned in a while, whatever, over here. Make some notes here, okay? screened. So there's quite a few questions there, which is why we pre-completed them. So you can see the maximum available score for these questions is 690. And the system is set up so that you could set a score in any configuration you want. So for example, you might have, are the storage area shelves clean? That might have a 10, and the no would have a 0. Not applicable would also have a 0. But you could, equally, it could be that the no had the 10 on it, depending on which way the question is round. And you'll see examples of that a bit later. So each of these question sets has a pass mark. And I already know that these ones are set to 70%. So the total score that was achieved is down here, and then we've got a percentage score of 65 down here. Documents can be uploaded and so on. So the concept is that on a PC or a touchscreen device, we would be running through each of these sections and and assess all the different areas of the business and so on. I'll just quickly run through these. So you can see, because these are what we call sliders, they're touchscreen friendly buttons that allow us to quickly select the answers. If anything's missing, it'll tell us that, and it will mark it so that we have to go back and do that. And that will happen also on the mobile devices as well. Okay, so we'll just go and do the last one, and this kind of thing here. And you'll notice the audit summary is the next section coming up. So all of these scores have been totted up, and then in the audit summary section, we have the different sections of the audit, the maximum score, the score percentage, and whether they passed or failed. So we could also have other fields on here to log corrective actions and other things like that. But we just wanted to demonstrate the concept. So each of these rows on this table here is picking up the score from each of the sections that are there. So hopefully what you'll see from that is a very straightforward, easy to use scored system that would enable you to, depending on what your content is, so the sections that you want, the questions that you want to use and so on, to give you a way to benchmark cleanliness at a particular place, particular site, in a particular time, COVID-19 safety, etc., etc. So that's the first example I want to show you. And now comes the challenging part, because I'm going to try and switch over to tablet device and take us to that place. Right, so just bear with me 1 second. Right, so this is now on my Android, Samsung Galaxy, whatever, tablet. This will work on iPads and stuff as well. So I'm just going to go over to the Google browser here. Chrome actually is what I want. So just let me go back there. Chrome. Okay. Okay. So after you've logged in to the system, you'll be presented with whatever module options you have. We're going to tap into the questionnaire screen here. And in this particular one, I'm going to look at not the employee, but the employer startup assessment. So in this particular one, what you will see is that instead of a big table with lots of rows in it with questions, what we've done is we've taken each row and made it vertical, as you can see. So each row becomes a little table where you've got the question, and then we can press the answer. Now in this implementation, we just switch these things on and off in the background with how we set these up. But in this implementation, we're not showing the score field because we want to keep that for maybe the approval stage. So later on, I'll show you the score field back on the kind of normal system. So we simply tap these next arrows and we can answer the questions, and all the time the system is recording the score of that audit in the background, and then we can prompt for more details and so on. So we complete those 5 questions, and then we move on to the next section, which in this particular case is going to be the documentation for COVID. So have you updated your food safety management system and so on. So we could raise actions here if we wanted. But the important point is that we're measuring things, and whoever is completing the audit or the inspection or whatever it is not necessarily aware of that at the time. And that's why we might want to hide the scoring so they don't try to game the system at that particular point. So here's an infection control. So you can see it's all about the content that we would use in this particular type of approach. Okay, so just to, again, you can navigate through the different sections by tapping in the top, so it's all kind of mobile friendly. You'll notice we didn't put an audit summary in here because that's hidden from this side, but we're going to see an audit summary on our side of the system. And then there's a sign off section here, but it won't let us sign off until we've completed the sections which are not yet complete. And again, we can put whatever declaration that we want to use there. So what I'd like to do next is move the host onto the mobile side. So I'm going to show you the employer assessment and then the employee assessment, and then I'll go back to the PC and hopefully everything works as we expect it to work. There we go. So now we're on my phone. Wow, the wonders of modern technology. So let's go here, and I'm going to jump over to our 3iVerify where we were before, but this time I'm going to look at, if I just go to the home screen. So you'll see that even on a mobile device, the home menu kind of reconfigures itself. It's just a little bit smaller, as you would expect. And then in the questionnaires side, we're just going in here. There's a little bit of overlap, some text we need to sort out here, but it's all functional. We get into the, did I go into the right one here? Yeah, so this is the example of the employee assessment. So if you imagine a scenario where an employee reports for work, and every now and again we may want to ensure that they, firstly, they're aware of their duty of care, and secondly, that they are telling us about their, I guess, COVID behavior outside of work. So we can do this kind of thing. So they'll just enter in their name. We could have an employee number lookup, which automates the population of their details, for example. But for the example here, I'm just doing it the old-fashioned way. And you can see there are 11 questions that we spoke about earlier. Have you been advised or requested to have a COVID test? And if you, obviously, if you put yes there, that's going to give you a stonking grade. Or if you put no, they're going to get a good score. And if you get yes, you're going to get 0, which means that you're going to get flagged as having a problem. So again, step through that and step through all the questions. These ones have already been answered. And we get to through all of the different questions, and these questions are editable. You can set these up as you need to, and ensure that you've got the standards in place that you want. So I'll just do that one there. Are you aware of duty and care to your employer? Yes, you are. Done. Okay, and then you go next, and then they get a sign-off declaration that they've provided the right information. The contents of this assessment are accurate, that you could even go as far as to say this risk assessment may be used in a court of law, if you want to be as heavy as that. Don't recommend that, but you could. And then you pop in your name and then submit this back for approval. And once it's approved, we have digitized data. So that's how, you know, there are some tweaking and improvements we want to make on the mobile, but it is functional and it works and it's good for gathering data. And if you need to engage with employees, this is a relatively unobtrusive way to do that, and that makes sure that they're not tapping into computers and laptops and stuff that might actually infect them. They're using their own phone, for example. So there are a number of different advantages for that type of approach. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and get Zoom to play ball and make the main system the host again. So just coming out of there. We're already here. So if I go in and look at the questionnaires list in here, it could be the forms list. We could implement it in either section. So you'll see here are all of the COVID assessments. I can just type there. I get everything for COVID that's under my assignment. If I went with all, I could get further information from that. So let me just do that. I'm just going to go for all. And you'll see here's a COVID employer startup assessment that's been submitted. We go and look at this one. And because it's on the kind of admin side, if you like, then now we can see the scores, right? So we can't change these because they've been entered by someone else, but we can see the scores and we can work that through all the way for this particular one. Because you remember, you couldn't see the score on this one. We'd set that so you couldn't see that on the mobile device. And all of these scores feed through to the summary in this particular case. So those 4 areas we can measure the performance over time, and all of these numbers can be fed into a digital dashboard. All right, let's look at the employee assessment one now as well. So I think we've got there, let's see, employee. So employee. Right, so here are a couple of employee ones. Don't know if these have got data in them actually. Quickly look at them. Yeah, so again, you'll see the score feeding through there. And because this one got a no and a lot of yeses here, you can see that the overall score was 52%. We spoke about this earlier in the presentation. So with that in mind, I'd like to show you an example of how the data that can be used, because if you've got, well, even if you've only got 5 or 10 employees and you're doing this once a week, you know, every day, every few days, whatever it is, you're going to pick up data, you're going to pick up trends. And if you've got hundreds of employees, you're definitely going to pick up data and trends a lot quicker. So in our BI dashboard, you'll see we've got a new tab on here called COVID-19 assessment. And this is showing the results coming from a scored audit with the passes and fails of employee assessments through July, August, September, and October in this particular case. And you can click into these and drill in and get additional information about things. And this is just an example. We managed to pull this together in just like 2 hours or something like that. But the key thing is that you're able to get analytical data. Now, if you look at some of the individual question results, we can also get individual data on those. So let me just drill out of this one. Reset that. Yep. So this is a kind of share of result down here for individual questions. So if you imagine applying this scored audit result with questions on specific things that you're interested in, checking as to whether there are things that you need to pay attention to, either in your supply chain, in your manufacturing business, in your hospitality business, or in your employees, then we can get quick analytics through this type of method, bearing in mind it takes just a few seconds for an employee to answer 11 questions. And bearing in mind, you're making sure they're aware of their duty of care and that you are being on the record, as it were, of establishing your duty of care, both to them and to other employees within the business. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Chris. I hope that this has given you some insight into how configurable our solution is and what the kinds of things that we can do with it. And what we're really trying to do here is provide some tools which help with what is the biggest problem in the world right now? How do we control this infection? So we're trying to give an example of how you could use this tool to help with some of those areas. Okay, so, and one more point, I would like to thank Magda, who is on the call. Magda spent a lot of time working with me to produce the COVID-19 employer assessment questions and so on. And we're looking for Magda to do a bit more work on that going forward with helping businesses, customers, and so on. So shout out to Magda, who is on the call with us today. So over to you, Chris. I'll make you the host again.
Thank you very much, James. And yeah, and a very nice shout out there to Magda, who's done a lot of work on this. So thanks for that support. Yeah, so James, there's a couple of questions that came in that I'll just put to you now. There was only a couple, so I think it's been, it's fairly straightforward. So I appreciate, there may only be a few questions. One from Mike and one from Celine. And we'll just start on Celine's question there. So Celine's asking if employers would like employees to complete this form monthly or weekly, would there be a pop-up reminder per employee, or how would that work?
Yeah, so one of the things we're looking at implementing to support this in the very near future, I'm talking the next 1 or 2 weeks maybe. Yeah, the ability to schedule, right? And this feature will be available for forms. So if you need to schedule, for example, HACCP and quality checks, then you'd be able to say every day I want this form to be raised. It'll be available for internal audits, supplier questionnaires, all kinds of digitized forms that you might want to send out to people. And we are also looking at making, some people have recently asked us for randomized raising of forms and questionnaires and so on. And I think that would be a very good one to use with employees. So, at random, an employee could be asked to complete this assessment. They'll get an email on their phone, tap on that link, open up on their phone, answer a few questions, done. And, I think, again, coming back to the whole point about ensuring the right behaviour within your food company, your business, that would be a good way to try and make it clear that these are the expectations. And ultimately, there are disciplinary matters. If someone lies about something like this and then it turns out that they had been at a party last weekend and everyone at the party got COVID and they come in, the whole factory's closed down and 4 people die, well, who's accountable for that, if someone lies there? So I don't want to overstate that, but, this is happening, and it's happening every day because the whole world's affected by these issues. So scheduling, I think, is a great idea. Thank you for that question, Celine. And we definitely got that on our radar for the next few weeks.
Perfect. Thank you, James. Celine, hopefully that has touched on your point there. And I think, definitely agree on the answer there. There's some really nice options moving forward for that. On to Mike's question then, James. So Mike's asking, Mike's saying that there may be some areas within the production area where this Wi-Fi signal is weak or non-existent. So is it possible to complete an assessment on a tablet or a mobile device offline and then upload or import that into the system at a later time?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike, and we've been asked that one on a few occasions. At this point in time, everything has to be online. So we're focusing right now, we're going to close out this year with everything done on web browser, on mobiles, tablets and mobiles using the web browser on the device. Going forward into next year, we will probably be putting a lot of resource into discrete mobile apps for certain things. And the thing we're going to start with will be things like questionnaires and forms and access to documents and so on. So yeah, that's been a long time coming, and we are getting there with that. But what we really want to do before we start doing that is make sure that the infrastructure for everything to support that is being used, had been validated, and is ready for building a mobile layer on top of it. So we're not far away, but yeah, that's going to be 2021 for sure.
Okay, thank you, James. And that concludes all the questions that we had. If anybody does have any other questions, please feel free to pop them into the chat or the Q&A section just now. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to really start to conclude and wrap up today's webinar. So we do have a few more minutes if you do wish to ask any further questions. And as you can see on the screen there, I've just gone back to the example of the customized scoring. And as James is showing you some examples there of how that would work. Again, this is customizable to the point of the weighting, the questions that are in there, and also, what type of assessment that may be. But I just want to touch on, got that moving. Just want to touch on the introductory office. So, based on all the webinars we like to do, we are looking to implement some of our improvements and additions to the solution to our existing customers, and also then, of course, like any business, attract new business as well. So as you can see there, touching on the COVID employee questionnaire that we have just run through there extensively, we are going to make that available to all of our existing customers. And then for any new customers that we do bring on within the November period, so over the next kind of 3 or 4 weeks, we are going to offer that as a free service as well. So, if you do want that and you are on the call, then please be in touch, and we can definitely work at getting that implemented for you. And for any new customers, again, we can discuss that as we go through the demonstration and the onboarding. So that really concludes everything from my side, so I just want to start by thanking everybody for attending today's webinar once again. And we look forward to hearing from you over the next couple of weeks. And James is about to set off to sunny Tenerife, so I'll pass you over to him, and he can do the kind of final thank you.
Yep, thank you very much, everyone. I'm hoping that, I'm saying this with tongue in cheek, I'm hoping that it's not going to be another 4-month lockdown in Tenerife like I experienced earlier this year. But one thing that did prove was that being a digital business gave us the kind of resilience and flexibility to be able to work from anywhere. So whatever happens, stay safe and keep in touch with us about anything that we can help with you. And thank you again for coming today. Bye for now.